Hey there, how's it going everyone? In this video, we're going to go ahead and deploy our application to Heroku, which is a service as a platform as a service tool that helps us to deploy our apps easily. We've built our application with most of the functionality that you may need, and I hope you guys have learned a lot from this. And right now, I'm going to deploy this application so that you can also contribute, as I'm going to leave the GitHub link in the description. So without further ado, let's get started configuring our app. For me to get over to Heroku, you'll need to create your own account. So right here, I'm going to create a new app. So I come to Heroku and create a new account. And when you have a new account, you can be able to create apps and then use their free dynos for deploying your application. So you need to call my app React Flask. Let's say app. Let's see if this name is not taken. So you have to always look out for a name that's not yet taken. So for example, I can say React Flask deploy. So I can actually call it React Flask, let's say recipes. Hope this name is not taken. So now our name is not taken, so we can create an app with uh, the following name. When we have such a name, the URL of our app for our Heroku app is going to be similar to this name. So right now we have our app created. Now I've already pushed this application to GitHub. I'm going to be making certain changes with the app, then I'll be deploying the app. So what I'm going to do in this case is to come right to our project. So for the previous videos, we've been seeing that we've been separating our backend from our front end. However, I'm going to make a few changes in our project layout. What I'm going to do is to move our backend files and move them within the same folder as our client file. So to do that, I'm going to stop the server of our backend. And after doing that, what I'm going to do is to first find out the files that are within our backend file. So I'll do is to move everything within this file. Since I'm using a Linux terminal, I can say move star, then I can simply move it just outside the folder, just one step above. So this means that all the files of our backend are going to come within the same folder as our as our front end. So right now we can see that we're having our, let's try to see, we're having most of our files are located in the same folder. So when I open this, we are having our backend and our client. So we're having our backend files within our client. Right now you can see that the client files, the modules, so they are all located within our root folder. So when I go back one step back, so when I say cd dot dot, I can be able to ls, and then we see that most of our backend files are located within our home directory. One thing I'm also going to move is our .env file. So right now I may not even move it. What I'm going to do is to just copy the environment variables and set up our production configurations on Heroku and then be able to deploy the application. I'm going to open that .env file, and as you can notice, for it stayed in the backend folder. And this is because it is a hidden file. So you need to open it, and what I'll need is a secret key and our SQL alchemy track modifications. So since we are using Python decouple, it provides us a way to easily use this even when we are using a platform like Heroku. So you need to head over to Heroku. So right here, what I'm going to do is to go to our settings. When I go to settings, I'm going to say reveal config vars. So config vars enable us to configure our application. They are like how you can see environment variables. So what I'm going to do is to reveal these configuration variables. The first thing I'm going to set is our secret key. So I'll just come right in here and say secret key. And I'll set the value of our secret key. So in this case, I'm going to set a secret key. If you're wondering how I generated my secret key, I used Python. So I can come and open up the Python shell. So sorry for this. So this can be Python 3. When I open this, I'm going to import secrets, so I can be able to generate a random hexadecimal string by saying secrets.token, and I can specify a hexadecimal digit 12, then it generates a kind of a string like this. So I'm going to copy this When I copy it, I'll paste it within our Heroku. Now I'm going to click the add button and that's going to set that key to a value. The next thing I'm going to add is our SQL Alchemy track modifications. So I'll do is to just come right in here and say SQL Alchemy track modifications. And then what I'm going to do is, so this is going to be track modifications and then I'll set the value to. So this will be false in our production. So I'll click add and that will be saved as our environment variable. Now, since we are working on a small application, I may choose to leave the SQLite database as our default database in this case. So right after that is done, the next thing is going to be to install GUnicorn. GUnicorn is the server that's going to help us to run our app in a way that's going to enable it to work in a production environment. Therefore, different people can be able to make different requests to our app without breaking it. So it is highly advised that we don't use the development server that comes with Flask. Instead, we have the option of using our GUnicorn. I need to close this shell. What I'll do is to install GUnicorn. So I'm going to say pip env install GUnicorn. And this is going to install JUnicorn within our virtual environment. Now that JUnicorn has been installed in our virtual environment, we're going to go ahead and add it to our list of dependencies. So what I'm going to do is to come and say pip freeze. So this is going to be pip freeze. It's going to be in our requirements.txt. So after this is done, I'm going to confirm whether it's in our list by saying pip list. Sorry, I think the terminal has frozen something. So I'm going to try to open up another terminal. And within this new terminal, what I'll do is to say, I'll actually first activate the virtual environment with pip env shell. And after doing this, I'm going to come right here and say pip list. So this is going to list the number of it's going to list the different dependencies we've installed for our project. For example, if we look for GUnicorn, it has installed version 20.1.0. So after doing this, the next thing is going to be to edit our profile. And the profile is a file that's specific to Heroku, which defines how our application is going to run in production. So let's go ahead and do this. So I'm going to come within our root folder. So I'm going to delete the backend folder. So I'm going to come this. After deleting it, we have our client. We have a node modules folder, but since it's not the node modules folder for our specific for our specific project, so I'm going to also remove this. After removing this, what we have, I'll also actually remove this package.json file. After removing this, what we have right now is our backend files and our client folder. So right now I'm going to go to our root project where we are right now, and I'm going to create a new file. This new file is going to be called the Procfile. So this Procfile is actually capital P. So I'm going to capitalize this by coming and calling it. This profile is going to contain the GUnicorn command that's going to run our application. So right now we need to target where our main app instance is. That's going to trigger our app to run in production. So I'm going to first close this. And when I go right here, we use an application factory where we use things similar to blueprints. So in this case, in our main.py, we have our application factory, which is our create app function, which takes in a config. Now, right now, what we're going to do in this case is to come to our run.py. Let's try to see. So we created a file called run.py where we actually went ahead and created our config. So in this case, we are having our config being dev config. Now in our configurations, we had created our our production config, our testing config, and our development config. So right now we have our production config right here. So we're going to go ahead and set this up. So what I'm going to do is to actually come right here and copy this. So I'm going to actually just come and copy this right here. And we're going to keep our SQL database, add SQLite database for now. And if you need to use Postgres, you can go ahead and do that. So right now, what I'll do is to actually read our environment variable as from the environment variable. So what I'll do is to say config. Then in this case, what we shall need, so I need to go right here. So we already imported the couple. So from the couple config, then what we shall have access to is the SQL. Actually, this is going to be our debug in this case. So now I'll also have access to our database, our config echo. So SQL Alchemy echo in this case is going to be, so I'll just set this to echo for production. And another thing I also set up is going to be our SQL Alchemy track modifications, which will also be config. And then this is going to be so this will be our SQL Alchemy track modifications. So right after doing this, I'm going to go ahead and also add this to our Heroku app. So what I'll do is to go back to our Heroku app. So I'm going to go back here and I'll add our debug. So our debug in this case for production is going to be false. And I'll add this configuration variable. I'll also go ahead and add our SQL Alchemy echo. So right now I'm going to just come right here and I add configuration variable called echo and I'll set this to false. Now, since we've kept our development database, that's what we're going to use in production. But feel free to get the project and try it with whatever database you may want. So right now we have these basic configurations. Now I'm going to do is to come to our run.py, and then what I'll do is to actually say, I'll actually remove all this. What I'll do is to come right here and I'll remove the app.run because it will run our development server, so that will remain with only our app. So right now what I'll do is to actually configure our app to run with our production config. So to do that, I'm just going to import our production config and then pass it within our app. So right here, I'll just come and say prod config. So hoping that everything is fine, we're going to head over to our profile and then edit the command that's going to run our server. So you realize you installed JUnitCon and you're going to use JUnitCon to run our server in production. So what I'll do is to come to our profile and I'm going to come and say web JUnitCon. So we specify that we need to run it as web, then we specify the JUnitCon command that's going to run our app. So right here, we are going to point to our main application instance, which is our app. So right in here, what I'll do is to actually come and say JUnitCon. In this case, we specify the file which is going to be run.py, and then the application instance in this case, which is going to be main. So I'm going to save this. After saving this, I'm going to also carry out some basic configurations within our application factory that are going to help us to run our application front end or our React front end with our server. So basically what you're trying to do here is to use our Flask server to run our React front end. So to do that, I'm going to head over to our main.py. And then within our main.py, within our Flask instance, we're going to specify two things. We're going to specify the static URL and the static folder. So the static folder is a folder that's going to contain all our static files. Now remember, we coded our React application using a series of JavaScript files. Now in production, such JavaScript files are considered to be an HTML document with a lot of JavaScript that we're going to build as we're going to see. So before I actually do anything, let me go and build all that so that we have our static folder that we're going to point our app to. Right here, I'm going to come and open the terminal. So I'll cd into our client. So I'm going to go to the client folder. And what I'll do in this case is to say npm and build. So this will build our application and make it in a form that we're going to be able to run in production. So we have successfully built our app and it has created a folder within our client folder, which is called the build folder. So the build folder is going to contain our production specific client. So in this case, when we open this folder, we can be able to see an index.html file as well as CSS and JS files. These CSS and JS files determine all the React code that we've been writing for this video. What we need in this case is to set the static URL path as well as the static folder. So the static folder in this case is going to be our build folder because that's where we're going to access the various CSS and JS files that we're going to render. We also need to specify a static URL path that's going to basically show us where to go and access our static files. So by default, in most cases, the static URL path is always at the /static URL. In this case, we want to set a custom static URL path. So what I'm going to do is to come within our Flask instance. The first thing I'm going to do is to specify the static URL path. So what I'll do is to say static URL path. So our static URL path in this case is going to be the root. And then we're going to also specify our static folder. So to do that, I'll come and say static folder is going to be equal to our, so we're going to point to where our build file is. So what I'm going to do is to come and say dot slash, and then in this case what we're going to do is to access our client, and then after accessing our client we're going to access the build folder. So just like that, now we are inside our build folder. So after setting that up, we're going to also send our index.html on our root route of our application. So to do that, I'm going to create a simple route that's going to be at our root URL. So that when you go to our application on the root URL, we can be able to see our index.html. To do that, I'm just going to come just below here, below our shell context processor. What I'll do is to say at app route, then I'm going to specify the root URL. So I'm going to add a simple view function. Then this view function is just going to return app.send. In this case, we're going to send a static file. So in this case, we're going to send a static file. In this case, our static file is going to be index.html. So right here, what you're doing is on our root route, what we want to actually do is to specify to just send the index.html back to us when we make a request to our root URL. The next thing we're going to also specify is the route that you're going to go to in case you have a 404 not found error. So Flask basically ships error handler functions that you can create, so you can be able to create our custom error handlers. So we're going to create a custom error handler. So what we shall do is to say at, so this is going to be at app dot, so I'm going to say error handler. So this is going to be our error handler. Then I'll pass in the error in this case. So our error in this case is going to be a 404 not found error. Then we shall specify the view function. So this is going to be our not found. And then we're going to pass in any error. So I'm passing any error in this case. And then what I'll do is to actually also send the index.html file. So in this case, I'll just say app.send static file, and then I specify our index.html. So hoping that that has worked. Now, as I had said in the previous video, the app is already hosted on GitHub. So what I'm going to do is to actually commit these changes and then send to GitHub. Then we try to connect our Heroku account to our GitHub repository containing all this code. So what I'm going to do is to come. So within our .ignore file, our git ignore file. So I'm going to come within our git ignore file. And what I'll have to remove in this case is going to be our build folder. So right now we even see that our build folder is ignored by Git. So I'm going to come right in here and I'm going to uncomment it. So I'm going to come here. What I'll do is to actually remove the build folder. So I'm going to remove the build folder and save. So that means that Git will be able to take it to GitHub. So I'm also going to come, so I have basically two git ignore. So I have this git ignore which I wrote for our production. So in this case, what I'm going to do is to just have this. So basically keep this and also keep that. So after doing that, we are going to commit these changes and push them. Then we try to do our first deploy. So what I'm going to do is to say git. Since you have a So git repository in here, what I'll do is git status. So after doing that, I'll just say git add all, and then that's going to add the different files to our git repository to stage them for committing. So I'm going to commit them. So in this case, I'm going to say git commit m. It's going to be Heroku. I'm going to just call this Heroku commit. And once this is done, I'm going to push these changes. So I'm just going to do a simple git push. So right now we see that we have some changes in our remote repository. So I'm just going to pull those. So I'll just pull, and now we have some conflicts right in here which I'm going to fix. So let's try to fix them. So I'm going to head over to our config.py. So right in here, let's see. So we're having errors mostly now dev.db. So our home.js. So let's try to check those out. So let me see. So right now we have coming changes. So right here, what I'm going to actually do is to just accept them. So we have successfully built our app, and it has created a folder within our client folder, which is called the build folder. So the build folder is going to contain our production specific client. So in this case, when we open this folder, we can be able to see an index.html file as well as CSS and JS files. These CSS and JS files determine all the React code that we've been writing for this video. What we need in this case is to set the static URL path as well as the static folder. So the static folder in this case is going to be our build folder because that's where we're going to access the various CSS and JS files that we're going to render. We also need to specify a static URL path that's going to basically show us where to go and access our static files. So by default, in most cases, the static URL path is always at the slash static URL. In this case, we want to set a custom static URL path. So what I'm going to do is to come within our Flask instance. The first thing I'm going to do is to specify the static URL path. So what I'll do is to say static URL path. So our static URL path in this case is going to be the root route. And then we're going to also specify our static folder. So to do that, I'll come and say static folder is going to be equal to our, so we're going to point to where our build file is. So what I'm going to do is to come and say dot slash, and then in this case what we're going to do is to access our client, and then after accessing our client we're going to access the build folder. So just like that, now we are inside our build folder. So after setting that up, we're going to also send our index.html on our root route of our application. So to do that, I'm going to create a simple route that's going to be at our root URL. So that when you go to our application on the root URL, we can be able to see our index.html. To do that, I'm just going to come just below here, below our shell context processor. What I'll do is to say app dot route. Then I'm going to specify the root URL. So I'm going to add a simple view function. Then this view function is just going to return app.send. In this case, we're going to send a static file. So in this case, we're going to send a static file. In this case, our static file is going to be index.html. So right here, what you're doing is on our root route, what we want to actually do is to specify to just send the index.html back to us when we make a request to our root URL. The next thing we're going to also specify is route that you're going to go to in case you have a 404 known found error. So Flask basically ships error handler functions that you can create, so you can be able to create our custom error handlers. So we're going to create a custom error handler. So what we shall do is to say at, so this is going to be at app dot, so I'm going to say error handler. So this is going to be our error handler. Then I'll pass in the error in this case. So our error in this case is going to be a 404 not found error. Then we shall specify the view function. So this is going to be our not found. And then we're going to pass in any error. So I'm passing any error in this case. And then what I'll do is to actually also send the index.html file. So in this case, I'll just say app.send static file, and then I specify our index.html. So hoping that that has worked. Now, as I had said in the previous video, the app is already hosted on GitHub. So what I'm going to do is to actually commit these changes and then send to GitHub. Then we try to connect our Heroku account to our GitHub repository containing all this code. So what I'm going to do is to come. So within our .ignore file, our git ignore file. So I'm going to come within our git ignore file. And what I'll have to remove in this case is going to be our build folder. So right now we even see that our build folder is ignored by Git. So I'm going to come right in here and I'm going to uncomment it. So I'm going to come here. What I'll do is to actually remove the build folder. So I'm going to remove the build folder and save. So that means that Git will be able to take it to GitHub. So what I'm also going to come, so I have basically two Git ignore. So I have this Git ignore which I wrote for our production. So in this case, what I'm going to do is to just have this. So basically keep this and also keep that. So after doing that, we are going to commit these changes and push them. Then we try to do our first deploy. So what I'm going to do is to say git. Since you have a git repository in here, what I'll do is git status. So after doing that, I'll just say git add all, and then that's going to add the different files to our git repository to stage them for committing. So I'm going to commit them. So in this case, I'm going to say git commit m. It's going to be Heroku. I'm going to just call this Heroku commit. And once this is done, I'm going to push these changes. So I'm just going to do a simple git push. So right now we see that we have some changes in our remote repository. So I'm just going to pull those. So I'll just pull. And now we have some conflicts right in here which I'm going to fix. So let's try to fix them. So I'm going to head over to our config.py. So right in here, let's see. So we're having errors mostly in our dev.db. So our home.js. So let's try to check those out. So let me see. So right now we have coming changes. So right here, what I'm going to actually do is to just accept them. Actually, these are coming changes, so I'm going to accept them. So VS Code contains this great way of seeing these changes. So I'll say accept the current changes. So after accepting the current changes and hoping that our code is running fine, I'm also going to go to, so I open up the terminal and then we see we're having home.js, even in our recipe.js. So I'm going to save this. Head over to our recipe.js. I also fixed the changes. So I'm going to say accept current change. So after this, I'm going to save, then commit the changes. So right now we fixed our merge conflict. So let's go to our recipes.py. So we also have a merge conflict in recipes.py. So we're going to accept that change. And then let me see recipes.py, home.js, dev.db. Now that we hope everything is fine, what I'm going to do is to actually commit. So I'll say git add all git commit, and this is going to be Heroku commit, and then I'm going to push this. So I'm going to say git push. Now hoping everything is fine, our application is going to be pushed to GitHub. Now the next thing we're going to do in this case is to go to our Heroku account and then connect our GitHub to our code on Git and to our Heroku account. So I need to go to our Heroku account. And what I'll do is to come to the deploy section of our app. Then what I'll do is to come and connect to GitHub. So right here I have the code hosted at github.com. So slash my username and slash name of project. So this is going to be Flask React recipes. So we already have the changes that we're from making right now, and we have all our backend in our root folder, and we have all our JS as well as our build folder. So when you open this up, you see that our build folder is within our client. So let's go ahead and try to join this. So I'll go to our Heroku account, and then what I'm going to do is to connect to GitHub. So right now, after connecting to GitHub, I'll be prompted to search for the repository name. So you need to come right here, and what I'll do is to just copy the repository name. So you need to copy Flask React recipes, come over to our Heroku. I'm going to paste this in. So this is going to be Flask React recipes. This small s. So I'm going to search for the repository. After searching for the repositories, I'm going to select and connect to the specific repository, in this case, which is Flask React recipes. Right now, I see disconnect. And after this, we can enable automatic deploys. So this means that every time we shall be able to push our code to GitHub, these changes will take effect if we merge on the main branch. So the branch I'm going to deploy in this case is going to be the main branch. So I'll just say deploy branch. After doing that, application is going to start deploying. So right now application is going to start deploying. So let's see. So right now the logging for the various things that are taking place on our Heroku. So let's try to see. So right now we see that we're having an error. So we're having an error here, which is multi-code error, try quoting the key name. So push failed. Let's try to find out why. So it's mostly it may be a pip file problem. So let's try to actually check that out. So right here we are having we had a merge conflict that we did not take care of. So what I'll do is to just say accept current change so that we have all our conflicts taken care of. So I'm going to come here and say git add all. Then I'll do the same thing, commit Heroku commit. So right now everything is up to date. Think I need to save here and also save our pip file. Then I'm going to run the same commands. So I'm going to push this, hit push. So let's try to see. So when I go to our recipe, so I'm going to refresh. So our changes have happened. So go to our React recipe. So I'm going to go to the overview section. Right here, we see that our application is now building. So I can view the build progress. Let's try to see this. So right now we see that our application has been deployed. So let's try to see if there are any errors. So what I'm going to do is to go to open app. And now we see that we have an application error. And the beauty with Heroku is that you can be able to access these errors as they occur in real time. So they provide us with the command Heroku logs tail, which enables us to keep track of these errors. What I'm going to come and do is to copy this. I'm going to copy this command and then head over to our Visual Studio Code within our terminal. I'm going to increase this for now. I'm going to paste this command and then I'll specify our app. So in this case, our app is React Flask recipe. So we want to basically log error specific to our application. So I'm going to paste this recipes and then enter. So we can be able to know the server-side errors on our app within our logs. So let's try to access these errors. You need to press any key to log in. Now we're going to see our Heroku login on our browser. So what I'll do in this case is to actually go ahead and log in. So when I log in, you can even be able to see that we are logging in within our terminal. So what I'm going to actually do is to log in since now the session has expired. I'm going to continue later. And now I'm logged in. So when I go back to our Visual Studio Code, we can now be able to see the errors that we are having. So let's try to see. So right here, we have our build failed. So when you come right in here, we can see our build failed. So when you come here, we see that we log in, that build has failed. So our app failed to build. So let's try to see what really happened. So we need to go back to our dashboard. So right here, so I have two instances of Chrome. So I'm going to head over to our overview section. So right now we can see build succeeded. So let's try to actually run this log. I'm going to cancel this and then run the logs again. So right now we see that our build has succeeded. Let's try to refresh our app. Try to see. So we can see application error. So error is recipes Heroku app. So let's try to access actually our index.html file. So we're having the same error again. Now the actual solution to this error is actually misplaced our profile. So if you're really observant, what I did was to place my profile within my client folder. So what I'm going to do is to remove it and put it within our root directory. I'm going to come and move it. So I'm going to move this profile. So I'll select it and then I'm going to move it to our root URL, our root project, and then after doing that, I'm going to stop these logs and then commit again. So I'm going to commit by saying git commit m change our profile. So I'm just going to say profile location. So after doing that, actually I'm going to first stage it for committing. So I'm going to say this is going to be git add all. Git commit m. So in this case, what I'm going to do is to just actually do git commit m change profile location. So after doing this, I'm going to basically come again and git push. So we actually pushed our application, but then it did not recognize our profile in our root URL, and that's why our application jumped to run. So right now it has pushed, so I'm going to head over to our Heroku once again, actually text browser. We need to go to our React application. So now we see that our application is building. We can actually go ahead and run logs. So I'm going to clear the terminal and then run our logs again. So let's see what is going to happen. Actually, this is going to be React recipes. So we need to close this. So right now we see that our build has succeeded and now our app is running. So let's try to access. So right now we see that it's running. So the app failed to load. So it crashed. Let's try to actually see. So right now we see that failed to find attribute app in run. So I'm going to come right in here. What I'll do is to actually come. So it has failed to find our run our run in our app. So I'm going to come to our run.py. And then what I'll do is to remove this if statement. So what I'll do is to just expose our main app variable or our app instance. So we need to stop this and then try to deploy again. So I'll add git add all and then I'll commit this as git commit. This is going to be -m. Then I'm going to specify that I'm fixing change app. Actually, just say change app instance. Then I'm going to commit this and then I'm going to push production. When I push, expect that it's going to deploy again since we have automatic deploys. We need to refresh here. So I'm going to come and then run our logs again. So we see that our app is now building. So let's try to be patient. So our app is now starting. Our build has succeeded and our app is running. So let's try to actually access it from our browser. So I'm going to come to our browser, then within our application, and then I'm going to refresh. We now see that our application is running. So let's try to actually run it. So what I'm going to do is to try to sign up a user. So I'm going to create a user with the name of John Doe, then an email of, let's say, John Doe at, let's say, gmail.com. And let's say our password. So put in a password and then confirm the password. So if I save, try to inspect. So the server responded with a server error of 5,000. So we need to come to our terminal and try to see what's up. So let's try to see here. All right, now I actually have an error here, which is key error is equal to false. So this is because we actually wrote our configuration variables as config as we use decouple to get these configuration variables, but then we did not actually specify what to cast them to, so it's basically reading them as false. So we're going to go ahead and try to change this. So I'm going to head over to our config.py. Within our config.py, I'm going to specify that our uh, we're going to specify that our keys are going to be read as booleans. So what I'm going to do is to come right here, and then debug in this case is going to be false. So I'll say cast going to be bool, and then right here what I'm going to do in this case, I'm also going to do the same. It's say cast is equal to, so I'm going to save, and when I save, I'm going to come right here. I'm going to stop this log, these logs. After stopping the logs, I'm going to git add all. So this is going to be git add all. Sorry for that. Git meet m. So this is going to be a change. So this is going to be change config verse. So this is going to be config verse to, and so I need to meet that and then push that we redeploy again. So I'm going to push that. Now let's hope everything is working. Our front end has been deployed, so let's also hope that in this case our backend is going to be deployed successfully. We need to head over to our, right now we see that our application is actually building. Then I'm going to go back to our code and try to run our logs so that we keep track of whether we have errors or not. So right now we see that our build is starting, so let's try to see. So our app is going to run again, so now it's running. Let's try to see. So our build has succeeded. So let's try to actually access our app from the front end. So what I'm going to do is to try to carry out the same request. So what I'm going to do is to actually register a user. So the other time it was John Doe, then the email. So in this case, our email is going to be John Doe at gmail.com. So we're going to provide a password, and then we're also going to provide password. So when I sign up, right now we see that we have an internal server error. So let's try to see what this actually is. So when I come here, we see we have key error false. So where is that? Try to see key error false. Try to actually see this. So this is in best.py. So create.py, then try to actually see where that is. So /auth/sign up. Let's try to see our configuration. So right here within our configurations, we say cast is equal to bool, cast is equal to bool. Actually, our SQL alchemy echo is what we forgot, because when you go back to our client and you go back to our recipe, so we go to settings, then you go to config verse. So we're going to reveal our config verse. So you have our echo being false, and yet we need it to be a boolean. So it's reading it as a string, and that's why it's giving us an error. So what I'm going to do is to actually change this. So I'm going to come right here and also say this is going to be a boolean, so we shall cast it to a boolean. So I'm going to save, and when I save, I'm going to go back to our terminal, and I'm going to stop this with Ctrl C, then say yes. Then I'm going to meet again, so I'll say git add or then git commit. This is going to be m. So what I'll do is to actually say I'm going to change SQL Alchemy echo. So this is going to be SQL Alchemy echo true as to false. So this is going to be a boolean. So I'm going to just commit it like that and then push again. So let's try to see what's going to happen. So when I push, we expect that it's going to redeploy. So I'm going to go to our browser. So within our browser, I'll head over to our overview section. And now we see that our application is building. So let's try to actually run it, run our logs. So I'm going to run the logs again. So now we see that our build has started. And our app is running again. So let's try to access our app again. So I'm going to come and try to sign up a user again. So this is going to be John Doe. So let me try signing up John Doe and then John Doe. This is going to be John Doe at gmail.com. So then I'm going to provide a password, then then sign up. So we see now that our user has been created successfully. So let's try to log in with that user. So I'm going to try to log in. So I'm going to go to login. Now I'm going to provide the name John Doe, then our password. So I'm going to provide a password, then login. So right now we see that our recipes are even being shown since we are now using our SQLite database. So you need to go ahead and create a new recipe. So I'll head over and create a new recipe. So let's say potato and then add some dummy text. So when I save this, head over to our home, you see that now it has been created. So this means that we have successfully been able to uh, deploy our React and Flask application. As you've seen, guys, it has been a hassle recording this video. Please leave a like, comment, and share your honest opinions about this video. Thank you for watching, guys, and if you'd like to contribute to this project, please, the GitHub link is going to be in the description. Thank you for watching, guys, and hope you've learned from this video. See you in the next video, guys. Bye.